go. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I've got a friend of mine today who happens to be in the same office. We're in the same office in Westlake Village, California, and she's awesome. And I've been wanting to interview her for a while because she runs her business like an actual business. There you go. There's Paul. What's up, Paul?
Hey.
Good morning, Paul.
I was just introing Barbara. I was saying that she's one of the few people that I know that runs her real estate business like an actual real business. Like you look at it and it's there. And that's what I wanted to share with everybody, because one thing that we can all take away, hopefully, from this interview is to be able to structure it in the same way so that we can learn to scale as well. Because if you don't do the simple things right from the very beginning, you're going to have a mess when you're doing great. Like right now, a lot of real estate agents are doing amazing, but they're all over the place. And with their business, I mean, we're all over the place trying to help clients. Yeah, that's normal. But with our business, we should have that already solidified so that we know it's running, right? So Barbara, you know Paul. Paul, you know Barbara, right?
Yes.
Yes. Hi, Paul. Nice to see you.
Great to see you. And it really is the exception, because so many people do the activities necessary. You're lucky if you do the activities necessary to get the clients and then service the clients, but it really is next level to run it like a business. So delighted to hear how you do that in your approach, and looking forward to learning.
Great.
I love it. All right, let's get right into it, Barbara. First, let us know what area you cover and how long you've been in the business for those that are listening in that don't know you.
Sure. So I came from the corporate world actually about 15 years ago. So I work out of the Westlake Village office. Our specialty is the Conejo Valley, which really is the 101 corridor between the valley up to Santa Barbara. That's the territory.
Nice. I love that. All right. So corporate world, what does that mean? Like, what were you doing before?
I worked for a company called Pintel of America. I was the Western Regional Sales Manager for them. And I covered 7 states, had 21 salespeople working for me, and was on a plane every week, traveling, selling product.
Wow. All right. I like that. All right. So that's part of probably where the structure comes from into real estate, right?
Absolutely. It really was just a matter of transferring the skill set. I had been with the company for about 17 years, and they had laid off all of their middle management, of which I was one. And, I had 2 kids in private school, and I had to figure out, what am I going to do? And did you ever hear the story with Robert Harris, how I got into the business?
No, I want to hear this.
You want to hear this? Okay. So,
Yes.
So I had to figure out really quick, how am I going to replace that 6-figure income, right? They gave us all a 2-week severance, and we'd all been with the company like 17 to 25 years. And so, I really had to try to figure it out. So I was doing a lot of interviewing. Was interviewing with Amgen, a lot of local companies. And I happened to go into Starbucks one morning, because I am a Starbucks junkie, although I haven't been with COVID and all. And Robert Harris was in there, and Robert had sold one of our homes, years before. So he was like, "Hey, what's going on?" And I explained to him what was happening, and he's like, "Oh, wow, you should really get into real estate." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, no, thanks, but that just doesn't interest me at all." And so, we stood in line and we chatted and we had our coffee, and then it was about a week later, I was in line again. Robert happened to be in line again, and he's like, "So what's going on?" And I'm like, "Oh gosh." And I'm like, just going through a lot of interviews, really just trying to figure out what it is I want to do, because in the corporate world, I had always finished in the, top sales rankings. And then once you did that, you got your commission cut and you got a bigger territory, right? That was your reward for doing such a great job. So, I was really vacillating about whether or not I wanted to work for another company. So as I was in line with Robert again, he says to me, "Hey, I got this book for you. Stay right here." And he ran out to his car and he brought in the MREA, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, the red book, right? And he hands it to me and he's like, "You got to read this." And he's like passionate about it, and I'm like, okay, and I got done, I got my coffee, and I was like, I do not want to read this book. I mean, real estate, it does nothing for me. And I don't know, I just had a bad impression of what real estate agents were like. I felt like it was kind of like being a used car salesperson. It just didn't interest me. So I got in my car And I said, you know what? I have to read this book because I know I'm going to run into him again. He's going to ask me, what do you think of the book? Number one. Number two, I don't even have a job. So, the least I could be doing is taking a look at the book. Well, I sat down to read it. 2 days later, I was finished with it. I put together a 5-year business plan and said, in 5 years, I'm going to be the #1 agent it was the Thousand Oaks office at the time.
Wow.
And I was on my 5th year. So that was how I got into the business. That's how I started. And my only regret is I didn't start 20 years sooner.
It must have been a huge change for you going from really an income that you could count on to, hey, you make $0 until you sell your first house. And as we all know, there's a lot of lead up to sell your first house. And that to me is one of the key things about running your business like a business instead of running around. You can do a bunch of business running around, but the market drops off a little bit, your business drops off. You're like a cork floating in the water. So running your business like a business does that, you find that helps to smooth that out and make it more predictable?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Paul. I found that, when I started, right, it was like the Gary Keller red light, green light, right? Well, I didn't have any income, so I couldn't be spending income. So I focused on for sale by owners, and I got my first listing in 2 months. I didn't go to any of my sphere. I wasn't comfortable with that. I just felt like I couldn't do that. So I really built my business on things that didn't cost money. So my first year in the business, I built it on open houses. That was what I did.
That's super cool. And what's interesting is I hear that sometimes with newer realtors that they're not comfortable going to their sphere, and I understand why. But you did the things that were necessary anyway. And now I'm imagining you go to your sphere all the time. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Now I'm completely comfortable with that. I just wasn't back at that time. I just felt like, I don't know. I just know other people. Like I said, the experience that I had with other real estate agents wasn't a positive one. And I didn't want to be that same real estate agent. So I felt I was more comfortable talking with people that I didn't know than ones that I did.
That makes sense.
What approach did you use with people? So, I can understand you don't want to go to your really great friends. You're like, hey, I've known you for 20 years. I've been in the real estate business for 2 weeks. I'd like to list your house. That's where that thing comes from. What do you do? What do you say to for sale by owner or somebody who you've still been in the business only 2 weeks, but you don't have an issue with that?
Well, it's really interesting, Paul, that you mentioned that, because the entire time, my first year, no one ever asked me, how long have you been in the business? And though I think maybe once and I said, oh my gosh, seems like forever. And it did. I was going into the office at 4 a.m. every day and getting home at 9 o'clock every night. So it did feel like I'd been in it forever. Surprisingly, people don't ask that question.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I have a question about that, because a lot of agents, as they transition into real estate,
and then I'll talk about your organization. It's just that you mentioned something right there that I did that you just mentioned. And Paul, chime in, because I want to know what you say about this. You said you'd go in at 4 and you leave at 9, right? Some people will look in and hear and say, that's absurd. I would never do that, right? I'm going into real estate to gain freedom, right?
Right. Well, I knew I had 2 kids in private school, and I wasn't going to take them out. I wasn't going to make them have to sacrifice for my situation. And so that was the sacrifice that I made. I had to do it, and it paid off. I mean, my husband and I had to switch roles. He was the one who, got the kids ready in the morning, made their breakfast, took them to school, picked them up, took them to all their activities, and that was the sacrifice I made. And I think the payoff was, I gave up some things along the way. When my daughter graduated from high school, I'll never forget, we were driving home from the ceremony and getting ready to meet some people and have the celebration. And she said to me, Mom, I just want you to know that if it wasn't for you and the sacrifices that you made, I wouldn't be who I am today. And that was it. I realized I had made the right choice.
I love it. I love it. And Tristan, I know you said, what do I think of that too? And you do gain freedom by working for yourself, and you also gain a lot of responsibility. Um, there's really, sorry to say, there's really a whole society of people that just, they go to work and they leave work and they get their paycheck and that's it. And real estate, of course, attracts other people, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And there's a lot of things. This is why we do this, Tristan, because we want to talk about the systems and models that, when people pour into it, it can become more automated, like Tristan's business and Barbara's business. But until you do that, there's a lot of energy and work to make that happen, to make that work for you. And I talk to people, ask me all the time, should I get into real estate? Friends, and I've had some friends who are very, very talented that could crush it. And sit down and talk to them. They're like, well, their idea of it is doing it part-time. And usually by the time I'm done talking to them, I've done a good job of convincing them not to go into real estate because I really,
It's so true.
I really think that, it's not there's so much energy that it takes to do one deal. You could bump into a deal. Oh, my cousin needs to sell a house or whatever, but, to generate one deal outside of your immediate family, it takes so much energy to do that, but it takes a little less energy to get the second one and third one and fourth one and fifth one. And so part-time, just putting a lot of energy and getting a lot less return.
And I think this market is so fast paced right now and changing so quickly that you can't be in this business and be a part-time agent. You're just going to get swallowed up and spit up. For me, I'm passionate about it. Every day I wake up, I am like so excited for my day. And for me, it's not really about the freedom so much as I like the flexibility. Like this morning, I went into the office at 5. I was in the office this morning, had to get some things done, and then I came back here. But I'm not. I have that flexibility, and for me, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Barbara, on that, you get a lot of agents who say, "Oh, you know what? I'm just going to jump into this business and
we'll see how it goes, right?" And then they really quickly realize that exactly what you and Paul just said, which is it's a lot harder to be consistent over the long run. And that's why we lose a lot of agents. So what you did at the very beginning, when you created a 5-year business plan after reading the MREA book, was brilliant. I mean, I think you coming from a whole different world than most agents come into this, right, was a blessing. So the thing that I don't want to miss, and those people are paying attention. By the way, one person said what you said was beautiful about your daughter on the Facebook group.
Oh, thank you.
That was awesome. But with that, how did you transition into this business and have your family be strong enough to sustain this over the buildup period? Because I know doing this personally, there's a strain sometimes, right?
Right. I think, I've been with my husband for 40 years and he's my best friend and just the most amazing father. And I couldn't have done it without him. I mean, you have to, your significant other has to be able to support you, when you make this leap into real estate, right? And they have to understand, it has to be a partnership, and they have to understand. And I think once my husband got to the point where I was making more money than he was, it kind of clicked for him, like I'm going to support her 110%, right? And he has just been my warrior, whatever it is, he's there. So I'm really blessed to have that.
That's awesome. I love that. And I think that's where the challenge comes with a lot of couples that we have one agent in the business, one agent out. They don't understand the hours that are necessary to just dive in fully into this business, because there are those people in this business that say, yeah, I'm going to have a 9 to 5 and I'm just starting off in real estate, right? I understand a 9 to 5 when we've gotten to the point where you or I are at, right? We can do that, but we just love this so much. It's different.
Right.
But at the very beginning, to run a 9 to 5, it's like, it just doesn't make sense. It's absurd, right? So that's why I asked you about that relationship, because I think that's often overlooked. And I think what you said is really important. It takes two, right? If you're in a relationship.
Yes, agreed. Especially if you have children, makes it more challenging.
Yeah, I
And it
agree.
just doesn't seem always that the number of hours or the amount of work correlates directly to the amount of business that you get. You can, and during some period of time, you could put a ton of time in and, get very little out, and vice versa. You sort of hit a kind of like, it's a bit streaky, right?
It is. And I think that's where, even with COVID hitting, right? It was so important. I mean, I remember I had an assistant, full-time assistant. She went out on maternity leave last October and was supposed to be back in February. And then in February, she decided she's going to stay home permanently. And so I had just started interviewing 2 weeks in, and then COVID hit, right? And it was like, my world was rocked. And right away I was like, okay, I got to pivot. What's the first thing I'm going to do? I'm going to go through my American Express bill, and I'm going to cut every single expense that I can. So I used a yellow highlighter for what I definitely have to have, right? It was that kind of a thing. I used an orange highlighter for things to get rid of, and I used a green highlighter for things I wanted to negotiate a better deal on. And I shaved 25% off of my expenses and didn't even realize, it was so eye-opening for me, that I was spending money on things that I didn't even know I was spending money on. So I had to pivot, just like you said, Paul. You have those streaks, right? So I had to just get lean and make sure I was ready to take on whatever challenge that was. And that was me stepping back into the role as an admin in the middle of COVID and still keeping the business running.
That's
Yeah,
true.
that's
I love
amazing.
that.
Yeah, amazing. And I found that with so many people too, is that when we do cut through our budgets, you're afraid you'll be missing so much if you take out 25% of your budget. And I need to go through and figure out exactly what percentage I've cut, but amazingly to miss very little at all.
Right.
There's the stuff, and there's the things like, well, this isn't absolutely necessary, but I still want to keep it. And to that I just go, okay, fine, keep it, but just be hardcore on so many different things. And I also like what you said about negotiating some of the vendors also, because there's a lot of stuff that people didn't even think about negotiating. And now as soon as you pick up the call, you don't have to say, hey, I'm going to drop you if you don't. You can say, hey, look, things are a little more challenging. I'd be more comfortable if, and you're
Yes.
not cutting out the relationship. You just leave it, put it on them, and you'd be surprised what results you get from just those conversations.
You're right. I mean, every company I called, even some of the smallest companies, they all agreed to do something, either reduce it, change my plan, give me a few months free, everyone. So, I mean, you've got to ask, right? You've got to be able to ask for it.
Mhm.
What are the other things that you're doing differently in COVID? So love so you do the budget cut, and I like the way you did it. We can all learn from that. 3 highlighters. I like it. What else? What other changes did you make to do business in this environment?
I really kind of went through, to start with, like in March and April, I really kind of went through my systems, because I found out there were a lot of holes there in the cheese that I didn't realize. My assistant had been with me for, I think, 3 years. And I think, when they first start, they're really, really great. And, my assistant she was fantastic. However, they start to get a little bit complacent, maybe a little lazy in some of the things that they do, and maybe don't follow the systems exactly how they're supposed to be done. So I took that first 60 days and just kind of made sure I was really clean and ready to go. And then I reached out to Tristan, and he was great. I wanted to hire a virtual assistant. I decided I'm not going to hire, an in-house person until we get through COVID. So Tristan recommended, I think it was Virtue Desk, right, Tristan? And they've been fantastic, absolutely fantastic. So I have 2 virtual assistants, and I'm using them in different ways during COVID. And so that's kind of what I've done that's different.
All right. Can we go a little bit into part of that, Barbara? Because you mentioned hiring, and I want to know, as you've been scaling over the years, because you've been in the business for a while, what has been the best hire you've made to be able to scale at every time you're going up? So at the very beginning, and now you fast forward to where you are now, what's it allowed you to go up so fast?
I think it depends where you're at in the process, right? If you're just starting out as an agent, when I started out, I had my first listing in 2 months, And after I got my first paycheck, I hired a part-time assistant. I realized right then, even though I didn't have the money, I realized I'm going to hire someone part-time because it's going to allow me to go out and leverage myself. And so I think to start with, it's an assistant, right? And that assistant has to be an all-in-one, right? They have to be doing your contracts, your listings, your transactions, your errands, your, phone calls, everything. And then, you can build upon that. And I would say after that, the next best hire for me was Heather, my buyer's agent. She's absolutely a rock star and just love her to death. So that would be my next best hire.
All right. Now, with that, let's talk about the hires, those two, because you're leveraging, but at the same time, when you're hiring up, you're taking a step back in pay as well, right?
Right. You're taking a step back and pay. Here's my philosophy on that, because I have made some bad hires. And so I have, I think I'm actually really good at the hiring process right now, just because of the mistakes I've made and what I do. So I have a little bit of a system that way when I'm bringing anyone new onto the team. The first thing I do is start with Wise Hire. I think they've got a great system. They really vet the process. They do the disc, they do everything. And then once they send those people to me, I send them to Spark Hire. So Spark Hire is where you do the video interview, right? Because I found I was spinning my wheels, having people to come in to meet me in the office, and they'd walk in and maybe they weren't dressed professional or whatever it was. And I knew right away they weren't the right fit. And here I was sitting down and wasting an hour of my time going through an interview process that I knew I didn't even need to be going through. So the second step was to take them through Spark Hire, which is great. That's just a video interview. You're not even on it. You send it to them. They have to figure out how to log in, how to do the interview, the whole bit. And then after that, we would do a meet and greet. And then the biggest thing on an admin level would be, I used a company called Employee Test, EMPLOYTEST. And they have a variance of tests that range from legal to accounting to office to whatever, because I was finding on some of my bad hires, their resume was great. They're like proficient in office, everything I read was great. And then I watched them on the computer and, it was the hunt and pack. They couldn't, and Heather and I are going 150 miles an hour. So we need someone in front of us, right? We don't need someone we're dragging along. So the employee test for me, there's 3 tests that I would give in that system. And I didn't even meet with them after that if they didn't score in the range that we needed them, because no matter how much I liked them, because I knew they didn't have the skill set that we needed. So through that hiring process, it's enabled me to make very good hires in that sense.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really good point that you bring up. All right. So now you're where you're at. All right. And you get through COVID, you're like, okay, cut back 25%, but then surprise, it's the craziest real estate market we've ever seen, right?
There is nothing normal. There is no box.
It's absurd out there. And so how do you take advantage of this? Because it's like this. How do you scale?
It is so fast paced right now. And I just have to kind of giggle at it, because I think for me, what I realized was that I really needed to listen to where our clients were at and not try to bring them to where I was at or where I wanted them to be. And that was really hard, because what I was hearing was someone saying to us, I really want to get my house on the market right away. I really want to sell. I can't afford it. I'm going to Utah, right? Well, to me, fast is within 24 hours, we're going to have a photographer there. My stager will be there. The curb specialist will be there. And all of a sudden, I was getting pushback. People were like, whoa, 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 whoa. We didn't mean like that fast. Like, and then I was kind of putting them off. I lost a couple of deals because Heather and I were moving too fast. And so I had to take a step back and realize not everyone's going at the same pace as us, and their fast is different than my fast. And really just being a better listener as to what it is they really want. Because sometimes what they're really saying to start with isn't really what they want, So it's just about going a little bit deeper there and just pausing.
That needs analysis is so important. It might be shifting gears a little bit, but I just got questions from some folks that newer folks that I was working with, newer agents, they're really working on their listing presentation, which I think is a great idea. And the listing presentation, I want you to tell me, yes, this is the way, or no, you're wrong. But their listing presentation, they were really working on it. It was really looking good. But the idea of giving them a listing presentation and then just going through it, and my notion of it is really like, okay, you can have an elevator pitch, like, hey, I'm Barbara Radke, I do this, what are the 3 or 4 things that are most important to you in order to sign the listing? Do you do a needs analysis like that, or do you go through a presentation? How do you get them from appointment to signing?
I think the needs analysis is really important. I do that on the phone. So I kind of get that out of the way ahead of time. And I used to do customized presentation. And what I've found right now, at least with COVID, I always go back to that saying, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really true. It's not about me, it's about them. And so my listing presentation isn't at all what it used to be. It's just very, very listening and, analysis and putting together a game plan and showing them what that looks like. And then, having the back and forth, what do you think? Is this what you're thinking? Is this what you imagined it would look like? And really getting their involvement with it.
Yeah,
instead of just telling them what I do, right?
That's so right on with what I've been hearing, works more and more, because no matter how beautiful your listing presentation is, and here's all the value that you're adding, this is about you, right? When it's a product and it's like me, no matter how great it is. But to your point is finding out more about them and what's important to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was one thing I was going to tell you off of that, Barbara. One of our friends, Corky, remember Corky? He always used to tell me, he's like, Tristan, listen to what they mean, not what they're saying to you. I was like, oh, that's right. Because Corky was always helping me as a mentor way back. So
right.
It reminded me exactly what you were saying. And that's so true. I think we get so caught up in go, 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 because this is our world, mm-hmm. right? That we need to slow down sometimes. They're great.
Yeah, that was a lesson for me during COVID. When I think I had 17 in escrow, and it was just, no assistant, and just, a lot going on, right? And just moving so fast that we just expected people to step in where we were. And that was
so funny. So how do you keep all of your processes organized? Is there something that you continually do to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks and everybody stays accountable? What do you do?
When I first started, it was Top Producer. I became an instructor with Top Producer because I love to educate people. I'm an education junkie, and I love helping other people get what they want. It just excites me so much. So I became a master at Top Producer, and that's what I used. And then once KW came out with Command, I really have been transitioning more and more into Command. It's how I run, the opportunities I live in every day. That is how I run all of our new business. I move things over in chunks. I wasn't, because Command is still evolving, right? It's like, I feel like I'm doing the cha-cha with them. 2 steps forward, 1 back, 2 forward, 1 back. Like, at some point we're going to get there. It's just, we're not there yet. But I do love a lot of what Command has to offer. And I really love the opportunities area. So when I started with Command, what I did was only bring new business into Command. So I wasn't ready to export my whole database. And this is a recommendation I make for, agents that are newer is, just start right now with your new lead, your new listing, your new buyer, and start with them and start building Command that way. And that way you can work out the bugs as you go, and you can always, import whatever you have at a later date. So that would be, Command would be it. And then I also use CTE, Command to Excellence. I don't know if you are familiar with that with Calvin.
Yep.
Is it Mergen? I really like his platform. And then, just doing financials on the 5th and the 20th of the month, just, keeping in a routine on all of that.
Ooh, okay. Well, what do you do on the 5th and the 20th? What is his financials? What does that look like?
I know. Well, have you ever read the book Profit First?
Yes, Michael is a friend of mine.
Oh, he is. You know,
Yes.
that book, I read that maybe 2, 3 years ago. That changed my world. It really did. It was like the aha. And it was after that, I hired Streamline Financial. Are you familiar with them?
Yep.
Oh my gosh, that's the best thing that ever happened. So all I do is on the 5th and the 20th of the month, I move money out of my buckets, right? So I move money into my investment bucket, I move money into my tax bucket, and I move money into my personal bucket. So I do that religiously on the 5th and the 20th. And then on the 5th of the month, on the 20th of the month, I'm also reviewing, I call it my 6-in-1 report that I get from Streamline Financial. And that is fantastic because that just runs me through all the numbers. And it compares the KW model, which I love. So you can look and see based on what you're making, are you in line with the other agents that are at that same level of income? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
That makes
And
a lot
just to give people an idea, Profit First, by the way, was a huge epiphany for me. And I like to think that I run things like a business. But did you ever have the experience of figuring out whether you're going to use a new tool or buy a new thing or spend something on business by how much is in your checking account? And I'm like, all the time, right? It's like, oh yeah, this product sounds good. I'd like to give it a try. Oh wow, the operating account is fat. Let's use that. And so by doing Profit First, what do you do when the money, so income comes in? What do? You pay, you might pay your employees, or you pay your things that are on auto pay. Those are the people that get paid first. Auto pay, right? That's crazy. If it doesn't matter how small it is, if you're paying a $10 a month subscription, that $10 gets paid first. Bam, done. It comes out of your checking account automatically. Well, with Profit First, you can figure out no matter what. I started small. So like, okay, you can start very small. We go, you know what? Let's start with $1,000 a month. And it's like the first $1,000 that comes in goes immediately out of your operating account, just like the auto pay for that $10, and it's going to go into my profit account, right? And then I just go, well, how are things working? I'm down $1,000, right? But really, I'm ahead 1,000. Now how's it going? And then you could go to 2,000 and 3,000. That's just a concept of Profit First. There's a whole system behind it, but to people who aren't familiar with it, that's why I say Profit First is you're paying yourself first, and then you tend to make decisions differently.
And you know what's so interesting, Paul, about doing that is like, I can't wait for the 5th and the 20th of the month. I can't wait to move that money and see those accounts growing, and it's exciting, where before it wasn't exciting. The bills came due and it was like, where am I going to pull from? What about taxes?
Yes.
And this just made it so easy.
Yes, I was gonna say. I was thinking that when you were saying. I was thinking. Here's what I was thinking. I'll bet you this doesn't happen for Barbara, but it just happens for all the rest of us. And that is, it does not matter how much money you make. When I get the call and it's the CPA, I'm like, I'm gonna take a deep breath. How big is the check that he's gonna tell me to write? And what this does is it really enables people like me and most of the other people too to really, and it's good to hear you say that it helps you too, because you're so organized to begin with, but to organize it such that, can you imagine that at the, when tax time comes along, that you're totally set and that your tax account is completely filled? When you have that, just that one thing, you will know that you're well on your way to having a business and not just a sales career.
And I so agree. And I wasn't always there. I mean, I remember having to file for an extension or two and going, now I'm like behind. Now I'm behind. I got to try to pay off this tax bill and, save for the next one. And with this, like my accountant said, you're probably gonna have to write a check for like 130,000 this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I have the money in the account. I'm like, it felt so good to know that, like, okay, it's just sitting there waiting to write the check, right? And I never had that before. So, if people financially want to get a step ahead, I would highly recommend that book.
Mhm. And Tristan, thanks so much, because Miriam is someone who's asking great questions in our chat box, and Tristan just put podcast with Profit First in there. And you know what? I did read the book. I met Michael before. I'm gonna go listen to the podcast because I want to tune up again.
Good. All right. I love where we went, by the way, because we don't often talk about that in real estate. So thank you. I think that's really important. Now, Barbara, what does your team structure look like right now, including the people that you have that are working for you, just so we get an idea of what that looks like?
Sure. So right now, I handle just strictly listings. Heather is my buyer's agent. She works with all of our buyers. And then I have 2 virtual assistants. So one in the Dominican Republic, and then I have one in the Philippines. And I have a showing partner that is more of a fill-in. She's licensed. So, if Heather or I can't be there, or we need the little things done with someone who's licensed, she steps in and does that. So that's my team.
I love that. Nice. And what are you looking forward to here in 2021? Are you looking to make any changes, to add things, to take away things?
Yeah, well, one of the virtual assistant that I hired through Virtue Desk, one of my goals this year was to hire a virtual assistant that did nothing but special projects, right?
Ooh.
So not just someone who does whatever needs to be done, but specific projects. So that has been working out really well for me, because when I had an in-house full-time admin, she could never get to the special projects, because she was so busy running the day-to-day business things. So for me, I will probably keep that virtual admin on through next year for a whole list of projects that we want to get accomplished. And then possibly, we're just doing things differently with COVID. If we go back into the office, I'm not sure what an in-house admin might look like, because how we're doing it right now really is working pretty well. There's a few things that it would be nice to have an in-house admin for. And then I think my next hire is going to be like a call specialist.
All right. What does that call specialist look like?
The call specialist, I think, is going to, I have an outline written up. I think it's from Keller Williams, but it's basically going to be someone who follows up on all, does the data input for all the leads, all the lead follow-up, all the, what do you call it, when you want a recommendation, at the end of a closing, all those kinds of things, everything to do with leads. So, and because I think that's an area that's falling short for us right now with Heather and I is, we have a lot of leads and we don't, have the follow-up that we should have with that.
And Barbara, in Facebook, I'm getting a question about where you're getting your business from, because you mentioned at the beginning that when you started, it was mostly open houses, and then it transitioned into a lot more referral business. Where are you getting most of your business right now?
I would say most of my business right now is coming. Obviously, if I was to look at the pie, I could tell you exactly how it's broken up. But I would say the majority of our business is from past clients. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then networking.
Ooh, okay. What does this networking look like, especially during COVID? I want to know.
Yeah. Actually, it's actually pretty cool because everything's done via Zoom. So you can actually network more than you did before, just because you're not having to drive to a meeting. You don't have all of that time. So it is, I think it's a lot easier. So I belong to a couple of different 3 different networking groups that are different types of people. And that I would say is where a lot of our business is coming from, and agent to agent referrals. I love, helping other agents and getting them where they need to be. And they've been really great at supporting us as well.
Wow, I love that. And I have a question here from Star. What's up, Star? She's saying, what kind of projects are you looking to use your virtual assistant project manager for?
Oh, okay. So I'll tell you what I have him working on right now. I could show you the spreadsheet. You just freak out. He is inviting, so I put together an algorithm of what I wanted it to look like to invite Keller Williams agents across the United States. And so I started with, okay, I want to focus on the 5 states that have the most people leaving our state and the 5 states that have the most people coming in. And you can actually do that by going on your map in KW, right? So basically what he's doing is I went in and I said, you know, the person has to do a minimum of 10 transactions a year, you know, and then I want to invite him into my network with a personal note. So he's doing that one by one, Market Center, one by one. We have, I think, over 12,000 people in my network right now. And we're making really good. I think we have about 19,000 invites out right now.
I love that.
Oh, that's amazing. And how do you?
That's pretty
cool. Wow. I mean, yeah, right. To like skip over that to my next question. You know, that's right. We should just stop there for a second. Yeah. Thanks for that, Tristan. How do you keep the relationship warm? So, okay, now I've figured out what a great sort of algorithm to figure out who you want to invite. How do you keep it warm?
Okay, you mean with an agent? Like, is that what you're talking about? Like these invites that we're sending out?
With an agent, actually, with an agent, I'm interested in that, and then also with your network, so your network of professionals as well.
So what I've been doing on the agents is the ones that respond to me personally, which I'm probably getting between 4 to 10 responses a week from agents that either are sending me a handwritten note card saying, hey, thanks so much for inviting me to your network, or they've sent me an email, or they've sent me a text. I go back into the referral agent in Command and I put a yellow star next to their name. And there's a place where you can add a note. And then you can put a note in about what your conversation was with them, with the area that they specialize in. And then I set up a Zoom call for a one-on-one with them.
Wow.
Yeah, 15-minute one-on-one.
I love it.
Find out more about them. So that's how and I'm only doing that with the people. I'm not doing that with 20,000 people, but anyone that takes the time to send me a note card, shoot me a text, shoot me an email, and I send them a reply back saying, you're going to be starred as a favorite. You're getting a gold star in my command because I want to work with people like you that take the time to actually respond. These are the kind of people that I would want my clients working with, right? They've got good communication skills. They've got good follow-up, and that's what I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm. It's such a great point. Just really in everything that we do. There's a book, it's another one of these books that I never read, that the title gives you all you need, right? And I even forget the title, but what it was, the idea was, it takes 212 degrees to boil water. And people put so much time and energy and effort. So maybe you're up to 200 degrees, but you're just that much, like a little bit more effort for you to really shine through. And, if somebody reached out to me and I'm in a different state, and, we all know generally California has higher price points, and somebody's reaching out to me from a higher price point because, hey, I'm doing, 15 deals a year in the Midwest somewhere. Somebody reaches out to me and I go, oh yeah, okay, whatever. Or, maybe, just to do a little extra with that handwritten note. And the same thing with, I can assure you with the networking group too, that must make a big difference.
Very much so. Yes.
I love that idea. That's really good. You're taking that like 5 steps forward. It's pretty awesome.
Well, it's something I've had, like I've got a list of projects, right? And when I had my in-house assistant, that's been on the project list for 18 months and it never went anywhere, right? It's a big project, but if you hire a virtual assistant for, $8-10 an hour, it's not a big project.
That's so true. That's all they're focusing on and they'll have it ready for you.
And he sends me a report at the start of the day, what state he's on, what market center, how many invites went out, and how many are pending.
All right.
And then at the end of the day, gives me a report.
I love that.
And I want to push back and dive back just to get enough meat for people to really use on something. And that is, we talk to a lot of people. A lot of people talk about, mining their sphere for business. So we'd love to hear about that for sure. But, you're one of the fewer agents that we talk to that really talk about getting business referrals from a business network and also from other agents. You've talked a little bit about the other agents. what are you doing with this business network? Because here's the next thing I'll do. If I do anything, I'm going to go now run out and find a business network. But now what do I do? So what do you do inside of that business network? What sort of network? How do you know which network to choose? And then what is the process of getting actual business dollars out of those relationships?
Helping others with what they need.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Very, very, very simple answer.
You know, I think when you help another, and I'm being serious, when you help enough people, you know, get what they want, it just happens that it comes back to you.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we do what's called with one of our groups, troikas. It's a meeting of 3, like kind of like this,
Mm-hmm.
you know, where we're talking, you know, it's with attorneys and accountants and
Mm-hmm.
different people that we work well with in real estate, and then finding out what do you need? What are you looking for? How can I help you? You know, and that's really what it's about, is just helping other people.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of times we see, you know, all the different vendors that agents use, they can be looking to those people for referrals. You know, you should be asking your CPA for a referral. We've interviewed people that said, hey, you know, if my CPA doesn't give me 1 referral a year minimum, I'll go to a different CPA. Now, of course, like Barbara said, you want to lead with, how can I help you? So you might, you know, you shouldn't be with your CPA if you don't think they're terrific. So assuming you're with them, you think they're terrific. I refer a lot of business to my CPA. So what am I getting in return? That's a fair request.
That's actually a project for me.
Oh, I love it.
It's on my project list. It's just a little farther down, but yes, it is a letter that'll go out to our vendors and what it will say. Yeah.
I want to talk about the projects list, and then we'll wrap it up, Paul, unless you have another question. But I think, Paul,
I think when Barbara has an idea, she shifts it over to a project. And so this way it happens, because a lot of us have ideas that just never go anywhere. So
Right.
Barbara, how do you transition an idea into a project, and how do you make it happen? What's that process for you?
Have you ever read David Allen's book, GTD, Getting Things Done?
Yes, I have it right in front of me.
So that's basically the process that I use. And I use that along with Evernote. And I belong to a community called Ever Done with Stacy Harmon. And she's like the queen of Evernote and combining GTD with Evernote.
Oh, wow. That's a nice process. I'm Googling that as I'm talking to you right now.
And I put it in the chat box because, and to say the woman's name again that you work with. Oh, it was called Ever Done.
Ever Done, and it's Stacy Harmon is the owner there.
Stacy Harmon, Ever Done. Now I'm gonna look
I'll
at
tell you the reason why I'm writing that down is, you know, Tristan and I do stuff together, and you know, I think we both have great ideas. I think we both have great execution. And if there's one thing I could improve, boy, I would improve the execution for myself, you know,
Right.
And that is getting from the projects really in my mind to getting them done.
I used to have that same breakdown, so that's what Paul is completely normal. You know, there's a lot of white space between that, you know, between up here and then actually executing, you know.
It's weird, but it just dawned on me that process, which is it is unnatural for me. That process is similar to the profit first thing that we talked about. It takes a system for me to yank the profit out ahead of paying all the vendors and that sort of thing. And then, you know, I get a lot done, but it's like, what is, you know, I'll bet you know the Covey quadrants, you know, the four quadrants where you've got the important and urgent things that we generally get done, but then you've got the important things that aren't urgent, and urgent just means somebody's screaming at you to do it. You know, that's quadrant 2, is the important but not urgent, right? And then you fall into quadrant 3, which is the urgent things which aren't important, right? And we spend an awful lot of time in there because people are screaming for something, or, you know, there's a deadline, but it's not really a project that's top of the list. So organizing that really gets us more into that quadrant 2, which we ignore a lot, which is the things that are important, but they're not screaming and yelling at us.
Right.
That's true. And Miriam brings up a question here for you, Barbara. How do you not get overwhelmed, and how do you keep up with everything?
That is a good question. I don't let things, I mean, things can just be crazy as batshit, right? And I don't let it overwhelm me. Sometimes I feel, like, wow, there is a lot going on. I just look at it more as like an opportunity to figure out how can I do things better so this doesn't happen again, or so that we don't have a backlog of this, or whatever it is. I'm always looking for the opportunity to make it better so that the next time around it's not, so crazy. So I think streamlining your system, right, is really where it's at, is making sure that your checklist, all of that is just so streamlined so that you don't get overwhelmed. You're always knowing ahead what's coming. Now, granted, in this market right now, whether it's requests for repairs or, there's just a lot of crazy going on. Yep. And I just look at it like that's just real estate. I don't like get all worked up over it. It's just, I'm grateful I get to do it. I really am. I just, every day I wake up, I'm like, this is the coolest thing. Like, I love this.
And I think, were you always there, Barbara, or did it take time to get there?
I think it's a journey. I think it took time to get there. I think, like, to start with, like when I would have an agent on the other end and they'd do something, I would be so pissed and so like, what a a-hole and, everything else. And, and I don't even like none of that, just like, next, bring it on. We're gonna get through that challenge.
That's so true. That is very true. Paul, what do you think, buddy?
Yeah, there's so many different things. Maybe it shouldn't surprise me, and I get on with folks like Barbara, and it just, we do this to give back. And I've got to tell you, I learn more from doing these interviews.
I just took a lot of notes, Barbara. I knew I would, so I was like, I have this ready.
You're funny.
Yeah, and like we got a note just in the chat, really love your candor and honesty, because we're not interested in game face. We're interested in how is it really done and what are the real challenges, and someone as successful as you to say, okay, well, here's what happened, and then I lost my assistant, and what happens and what's the upside of that. That's another thing, is that Jay, it just gets us right out of something bad happens. I think you can be in victim mode for a little bit, but great question is what could come from this that could really benefit me? And that's a tough question when you face something really tough, But for example, I'm sure you were down in the dumps when you were laid off. You were making a great salary. You had done great through your performance and getting more territories. And the next thing you know, hey, you're gone. Here's 2 weeks severance. It's like, what, and what great could have come out of that? You wouldn't be where you are now, right? So that's a great example of that too. You're a living, walking, breathing example of really making the most out of all of these different situations. Really,
thank you, Paul. And I'll tell you, I had a really bad hire. She was only with us 2 weeks. It was beyond bad, and I let her go. And she ended up suing us, after, I don't know, she was actually on the job 6 days. And even though we're, in California, right, we have the right to do what we do. I even talked to my attorney. It doesn't mean you're not going to get sued. And she sued me for 6 figures, and I had to go hire an attorney and write some big fat checks. And at the time I was like, do I just get out of the business? It was so heavy and so hard and so wrong. And at the same time, I feel like I got my PhD on how to hire, right? That's when I implemented these new processes. I paid for a PhD, I should say. But that's when I implemented the new processes, right? That's when I did the employee test. That's when I did the skill check. All those things. And so it made me super, that's why I said that's an area that I excel in, I believe, is in the hiring practice. And it's only because of what I went through that I became so good at it.
So true. And you know, I'm gonna leave it at that. Paul, you're good with that, buddy?
No, that's great. Thank you so much. We've had great questions in the chat box. Really appreciate it. Tristan, wonderful as always. And Barbara, thanks for being such a wonderful guest. Really appreciate it.
My
That was
pleasure, you guys.
awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barbara. We appreciate it.
Okay, take care. Bye.